Good evening. Welcome to the April 14th, 2022 meeting of the Mashpee Conservation Commission. At this moment, I'd like to ask everyone to rise for the national anthem, or maybe just the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Is there any business in the audience that is not on this commission, or is not on this agenda?
Oh, shoot, I didn't see the agenda.
You're on it.
You're on it.
Is there anyone who's called in who has business for this commission that is not on the agenda?
No.
All right, Drew, if you could bring us in here with the pre- and post-hearing items?
Sure. Want to wait and see until Brian Whedon isn't here yet, so we can hold off on the minutes some time. And Marjorie, I'll just have you, is it okay if we introduce you at the end, just so we're not short on time for your introduction?
Sure, whatever.
Okay. We'll start out with the announcement that Brad Sweet, our longtime commissioner, has submitted his request to retire from the Conservation Commission. And I think Brad might be attending the next meeting just so we can kind of say goodbye in person, but he has submitted his request for retirement. So that'll be also put before the Board of Selectmen for their approval of that as well. And
Can we say no?
huh? Yeah, possibly.
Hopefully.
But Brad has served on the commission for a number of years, and we'll certainly miss his input. And Brad is always the one to make motions, so we'll have to have someone else step up for that role as well. So we'll thank Brad for his years dedicated to volunteering on the Conservation Commission, and hopefully get to thank him in person at the next meeting.
Good person and a good mentor.
And just a quick update on Childs River. Oh, somebody was chat. Let me just check and see. I'll make sure no one's having any problems here. Okay. I'm just going to scroll down to an image. We unfortunately, as everyone is familiar with the Childs River Restoration Project, this is the conversion of the Garner Bogs to wetlands. This is the image of what the area looks like today after being restored to wetland conditions. And unfortunately, it was discovered that in this area, this southwest corner of the bogs, this is a water feature surrounded by bordering vegetated wetland. And then over here, you've got an existing bog ditch that wasn't part of any restoration effort. It was left in its existing condition. And unfortunately, it was discovered that some kids, a group of kids, for whatever reason, had dug out a ditch here that now connects this wetland to this ditch and is slowly draining this water feature. So this is just a couple of images of what has taken place down here. And the Falmouth Rod and Gun Club are the ones that alerted us to this. So you can see here, there's the edge of the wetland. The pond is over in this direction. And there's the ditch that was dug out over here. I didn't capture the image. This is where the bog ditch starts. So this is the connecting ditch that was dug out. And Caitlin and I had gone over to do our best to fill it in, but it's still running water through here. So there's going to need to be a more significant effort. We just wanted to bring it to the Commission's attention that this took place. And we're working with the Falmouth Rod and Gun Club to come up with a better fix here to plug this ditch up. It's going to require a lot more fill. And then doing some other measures to essentially prevent any further activities in this area, which will likely involve either creating a large brush pile or dropping some nearby trees over this area to really just barricade it off from any future efforts to try and dig this out again, because if it's not dealt with, it could possibly drain a significant portion of that pond. And Who knows why they did it, but it looked like a lot of work for, to try and connect these two water bodies. So, but we're on it and working together with the club to address it.
Can earth moving equipment get back there?
Yeah, so that's the tricky part with the Bogs system, because you've got your access over here. This is the access road, and you can't really see it, but it comes out right about here. You can drive up and around to get to this area of the Bogs, but then you've got the river that you have to cross and then get over here to this ditch. So a small skid steer or small excavator, and there would have to be a portable ramp brought in to get it over the river to get to this area. So those are in the works to get that done. But it's going to be a little bit complicated to get machinery in there, so it'll have to be a compact skid steer or something equivalent to get in there and fill that ditch in. So kind of a shame, but things happen. So all we can do is do our best to fix it. I think we can move on to the regular agenda.
Very good. Now calling the 6 o'clock hearing, Francis Linda Farsi, trustees, 144 Wheeler Road. Proposed addition to existing dwelling. The representative is the homeowners, and this is an RDA. Please come before the mic, identify yourselves, and speak your piece.
So it was just a little bit difficult to hear. So we are proposing,
Pardon me, miss, could you
You have to really
identify
get
yourself?
close to the mic, because we've got people on Zoom. So if you're not right up next to the mic, they're not going to be able to hear you.
And state your name for the record.
And you can take the mic out of the, if you want to.
so Linda Farisi, my husband Frank Farisi, we live at 144 Wheeler Road in Mashpee. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am?
Okay. So we have a small Cape house there now, and we are proposing an addition, just a family room off to the side, to abut what we already have to connect to our existing house, and a garage. And we submitted our plans, up here.
Drew, comments?
Sure. So I'll show some images of the site. So the left image here, this is looking up from the water side of the property back at the home. This area here, this is where the proposed addition is. So it's going over existing landscape and lawn area. Right image shows the existing inland bank leading to the shoreline of Ashumet Pond. Just going back to the plan. So here's the proposed addition. You can see it's within the 50 to 100 foot setback. So in this area, when projects are proposed over pre-developed, pre-disturbed areas like this, in the 50 to 100, the commission can require mitigation at a 1-to-1 ratio. But I know in speaking with you on site, you had planned to do some planting on the bank already with high bush blueberry, and I think that would be in line with what we would normally require for mitigation. So just to go back to the image here, this is the inland bank. This is where the plantings will be installed, right in this area here. As I think you recall, you don't want to mow the lawn anymore, so it's.
No, I don't want grass.
It's a win-win.
So the resource areas are buffer zone to the top of inland bank, and buffer zone to land under water bodies and waterways of Ashumet Pond. All proposed work within the 50 to 100 foot buffer to the top of inland bank. And as I stated, the applicant has proposed to do native shrub planting along the bank. So the project does meet the performance standards for inland bank. And I'll hand it over to Caitlin. Any comments from building and Board of Health?
Sure, and just quickly wanted to mention too that if you're interested in doing any more lawn conversion, that there's a lot of other species that would bode well in the area, such as clover, and a lot less maintenance as far as mowing goes. And so just if you want to follow up with us on that, you're more than welcome to. We always are proponents for people who want to get rid of some of their lawn. Just quickly from the Board of Health, the change in footprint requires a septic inspection to be performed prior to building permit approval by Board of Health. The property is not in Zone 2. The septic is built for 3 bedrooms, Floor plans were not provided. Any rooms meeting BR bedroom definition shall be considered an increase in flow to septic system and in addition or garage. And the building department stated that the proposed addition is by right. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions and comments from our commissioners?
Just a quick question. The proposed addition itself, is that for additional bedroom space?
No.
No, it's not. So there's no
Enlarge the
increase.
bedrooms that are there. The one bedroom that's there is so small,
Right,
we're going to add to it.
okay.
And she wants room for her office, for her sewing machine, for her, all the girl stuff.
So you don't anticipate any problem with the Board of Health?
No.
No.
That's all.
Thank you, Paul. For our commissioners on cyberspace, any questions or comments?
Doesn't look like it.
All right. Is there any questions or comments from the audience? If there's no further discussion, we'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to recommend a negative determination with the homeowner cooperating with the commission on mitigation plannings.
All right, we have a motion with condition that the homeowners cooperate as they plan to on the mitigation plantings for a negative determination. Is there any further discussion? Do I hear a second?
I'll second that, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Paul. Now voting. Brian?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Charlie? Did he wave yes? Charlie, yay or nay?
Keep breaking up.
Oh, he's asking, yes.
Can you hear me?
Aaron? Alex?
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you. A negative determination is a good thing. You've got the go-ahead from us.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now calling the 6:03 hearing, Peninsula Council, 0 RSRE Rock Landing Road, Frogley Pond, proposed treatment and eradication of invasive aquatic vegetation. Representative, Solitude Lake Management, this is an NOI.
Ready, can you hear me?
We can hear you, yes.
Oh, good, excellent. Yeah, I'm Sean McCarthy. I'm a project manager with Solitude Lake Management, and we're working with the Peninsula Council. They have talked to us because of certain conditions, plant growth, et cetera, that they have found at Frogsley Pond. And they're working with us in order to find ways to control the nuisance plant growth there. So we had filed an NOI, and they're working with the council to try to seek an order of conditions for aquatic plant management. And the purpose is specifically to control the growth of duckweed and watermeal. Both watermeal and duckweed are native, but they can grow rapidly, and they can become nuisance fairly quickly. They can cover the entire surface of the pond, and that's what we had seen, I guess, previously in Frog Pond. The colonies can expand to cover the whole water surface, and when that does happen, and sometimes it can happen in a matter of days or weeks, the coverage can lead to oxygen depletion, fish kills. It can starve the plants that are below, also native plants, for oxygen and that. So usually when we see duckweed and watermeal, we realize that something has to be done to do that. And to help control them, we have recommended use of specific herbicides that have been evaluated and registered. And by registered, I mean they've been reviewed by the federal EPA, and by the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection, and have been added to their list of registered chemicals whose use is allowed, both federally and within the state. So the treatment we've recommended is fluoridone, and it's a systemic herbicide. It has long-term control of invasive and nuisance aquatic vegetation. The herbicide hinders the ability of those plants, the susceptible plants, to produce carotene, which protects their chlorophyll from photodegradation. Fluoridone is the one that we recommend most often for this type of infestation. Usually it's applied early in the growing season, and we have our NOI is good for 3 years, and we've added 2 other chemicals, which if the chances are, I would say that these won't be used. We often add them just in case because they have a slightly different way of approaching how they treat the, the weeds. And because of that, the other one is called Diaqua. Trade name is Reward. It's used for partial or whole lake treatments. And the other one is Phalaxidine. We call it Flumi Clipper. And again, the same controls as above. Very few limits. No livestock watering in the plant and the pond for 1 day. Drinking or cooking water, we say don't do it for 3 days. No irrigation for turf in 3 days. There's no restrictions for swimming, boating, or fishing. We usually suggest closing the pond for 1 day just to be on the safe side, but really there are no official limits for that. And then we often, usually do put notices up around the pond just so that everybody in the area knows that this treatment is underway. So that really boils it down to, what we plan to do, why we plan to do it. Happy to take questions. And my colleague, Keith Gazelle, is on the line too. He may chime in as needed.
Thank you. Drew, comments?
Not too much to add. You said these types of herbicides provide long-term control. What would you estimate, like after the initial treatment, how long that would be effective for?
It should be for the rest of the season. We do make other visits to the pond, and if we don't see that maybe one section didn't react well or whatever, we may come back and ask for permission for spot treatments. I mean, when I say permission, we will talk to the council here, and let them know we're going out there. Usually something like that is not a separate order of approval is not needed. Usually it's a blanket approval for the season.
Right. Okay. And can you just describe the methodology of how you go about applying the herbicide?
Sure. It's placed on board, usually in a mixing tank, and we use the water right from the pond to dilute it a little bit. It doesn't have to be diluted. Our reason for diluting it is simply so that we can spread the mixture out over as large an area as we need and do it evenly. So sometimes if it's not diluted, you have difficulty reaching all the plants that you want to do. And then it's distributed throughout the surface by a boat as we drive back and forth over the area where we have spotted the plants. We may decide in certain circumstances to use granular applications. In that case, we do it directly over where the plants are into a spreader mounted usually on the bow of the boat, and it goes over directly over those plants and sinks down at the roots and is used that way. So, that's the most common way of doing it.
Not too much more to add. I know that Solitude has been brought in to treat other water bodies in New Seabury, including Dean's Pond.
Dean's Pond, other places on the Cape, and literally hundreds of places around Massachusetts and New England.
Sure. So I know they have significant experience in this type. This is really what they specialize in. So, and we can certainly, if the commission approves, condition the permit for advance notification, which is typical with this type of work, to let us know when the application is made. It's good to hear that you notify the immediate abutters too, prior to application, just so everyone is aware. And not much more to add. I don't know if there's any comments. No comments from Board of Health or Building Commissioner. So we recommend close and issue.
Questions and comments from our commissioners?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Paul.
there was mention of 2 different chemicals, Diaqua and Phalaxidine. Are those included with the original application, or is that a secondary application?
They are. I had a little hard time hearing you, but I think I heard what you said. You asked if they were included in our application. The answer is yes.
So you have 3 different chemicals in the original application?
Right, correct.
Okay. I was just a little confused on those extras.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Keith?
Yeah, just trying to, I think, yes, they're included in the program as a contingency. However, really, as Sean stated, our focus is the duckweed and water meal. So we have no really intention to use those at this point. Only in the event in years 2 or 3 would we, if we needed to do some sort of spot application to maintain conditions in the pond. Really, the primary program focus will be the application of the fluoridone, the one herbicide.
Okay. Yeah, that clarifies my question. Thank you.
Other questions from the commissioners? Is there anyone in the audience who would like to make comment on this hearing?
Marion, you have to use the microphone. Sorry.
And we'll ask you to identify yourself for the record.
Yeah, I'm Mary Ann Gansemuller. I live on Rock Landing Road, abut the pond, but I'm also on the committee that maintains the pond. And we've been trying to fight the duckweed for years now, as you know, because we had a permit before. So we're happy to have these guys helping us. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other comments from the audience? If there's no further discussion, we'll entertain a motion. This is an NOI, and we can consider we can condition this to require notification before subsequent applications.
I would recommend that we close an issue.
Thank you. Do I hear a second?
Second it.
Thank you, Brian. Voting. Brian.
Yes.
Paul.
Yes.
Charlie.
Yes.
Alex.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you.
I think you missed Aaron on that.
She's not voting. She's not part of it.
Yeah, I didn't. She's not
It's a mistake.
to make the quorum.
Okay.
Now calling the 606 hearing for David M. and Anna S. Ferris, 36 Secaucus Point Road. Proposed dredging and expansion modification of pier, ramp, and float. Representatives Cape and Islands Engineering, and this is an NOI.
So at the request of the applicant, this has been requested to be continued to April 28th at 6:09 PM.
Do I hear a motion?
Make a motion to continue.
To April 29th at 6:09 PM.
28th.
28th at 6:09 PM.
Hey,
If there's no further discussion, do I hear a second?
I'll second that, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Paul. Now voting. Brian.
Yes.
Paul.
Yes.
Charlie.
yes.
Alex.
Yes.
I vote aye as well. Motion carries. Now calling the 609 hearing for Brian M. and Nicole K. Clark, 138 Waterway. Proposed pier extension, ramp relocation, and float expansion. Representative is Cape and Islands Engineering, and this is an NOI.
Good evening. Mark Dibb with Cape and Islands Engineering, representing Brian and Nicole Clark at 138 Waterway in Mashpee. So I'll go through the existing conditions real quick and the proposal and for the NOI we've submitted tonight. So this is located on Waterway. It's also located on Papaneset Creek. The work being performed is related to the dock. It's an extension of the fixed pier, relocation of the existing ramp, and an increase of a new float for the project. The work being performed will be entirely within the land under ocean and land with containing shellfish. The pier extension consists of 24 feet of additional pier out at the same angle, same location as the existing licensed pier. We're relocating the existing ramp And then we had proposed a 8x40 float for the project, and that float was in water in excess of 4 feet. We felt that appropriate for the site in the area. The harbor master did review the project and did not have concerns related to navigation. And as well, the Shellfish Constable reviewed the project and did have concerns related to the float size and that the area is bordering significant quahog stocks. Based on that comment we received, we did respond to that comment, reducing the float from 40 feet all the way down to 30 feet, and had resubmitted electronically to seek further input from the Shellfish Constable. And essentially that is where we are with the project. I'll give it back to Drew. Maybe he has heard some feedback. If not, we'll decide what action we can take. But we do feel the project meets Mashpee's regulations and is worthy of a notice of intent. I'll give it back to Drew. Thank you.
Thank you. Have we heard from the Shellfish Constable?
I did attempt to reach out to him today, but I didn't hear back. So I don't know what his input would be to the revised float size. It could be that he might be okay with it, or it could be that he may stick to no increase in float size, which is the original feedback. So it's just essentially unknown at this point. So I think what would make the most sense would be a continuance to allow him to provide feedback just for your benefit. I know that Marine Fisheries did also submit comments for this and recommendations. They stated in their letter that extending the fixed pier out into deeper water is in line with what they would like to see in these situations, achieving greater water depth. However, they also have concerns over the proposed float size, that the impacts of additional shading and potential impacts of restricting public access to quahogs for harvesting could be impacted from a larger float size. So those are the comments. Harbor Master, as was already stated, did not see any impacts from navigation standpoint. So like I said, I think it makes most sense to have a continuance so that Donovan, our Shellfish Constable, can respond to your revised plan of reducing the float footprint. So.
Also, is there a way to address the concern about shading? Do you work with materials that will allow more light permeation beneath the float?
We can look at float design since we'll be continuing. That's not a problem. And I agree. I was hoping to get that feedback before tonight, so no issue with waiting for that feedback. We prefer to get the feedback and do it appropriately according to his suggestions.
Appreciate that. All right, is anyone here in the audience to make commentary on this? Is there any discussion from the, yes, Paul?
What is the size of the existing float right now?
It is 6 by 20.
6 by 20.
So the revised proposed float is 8 by 30, down from a 8 by 40.
Yeah, the plans in front of you are the 8 by 40. We received the revised plans yesterday, so the ones on the screen reflects the 8 by 30 size.
I missed the existing float. I didn't see that here.
It's
Okay.
All right, if there's no further discussion, Hilton, what would be the next date for continuance?
April 28th at 6:12.
What was that, April what?
28th at 6:12, Charlie.
I'm having a hard time hearing you on this.
I'll make a motion to continue a matter for Brian M. and Nicole K. Clark at 138 Waterway to April 28th at 6:12 p.m.
Thank you, Brian. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Now voting. Brian?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Charlie?
Yes.
Alex?
Yes.
I vote aye as well. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now calling the 6/12 hearing for George E. Wakeman Jr. and Tina M. Treficanti, trustees 76 Greensward Road. Proposed addition to existing dwelling and mitigation plantings. The representative is Cape and Islands Engineering, and this is an NOI.
Good evening. For the record, Raul Lizardi from Cape and Islands Engineering, representing the applicants, the homeowners at the property for 76 Greensward Road. The project is an existing residential development lot. On the back of the property, there are some wetlands. There's a BBW, or actually an isolated land subject to flooding. And there's also a coastal bank because the back side of the property is in the floodplain. The majority of the land is above the floodplain in the X zone. The homeowners want to do a small addition on the back of the existing house. The addition consists of approximately 53 square feet to the existing house. But because it is moving closer to the wetland resources in the form that the existing back of the house is 56 feet to the wetland, the proposed addition will put the addition at 53 feet to the wetland. And it's going from 48 feet to the coastal bank to 44 feet to the coastal bank. So because we're moving closer or in the directions to the wetlands, we calculated the Mashpee waiver mitigation planting requirements. And it does calculate as a requirement of 67 square feet of mitigation plantings. The property is fairly cleared or landscaped all the way to the property lines. So the only corner of the property that we have to propose mitigation planting that is closest to the existing wetlands is the northeast corner of the property. So we have a piece of triangle shown on the plan for this 67 square feet of mitigation plantings. Eventually, the area between this mitigation planting and the existing natural vegetation will blend into one, but because the land outside of it is not owned or is not within the confines of this lot, we didn't go all the way to the existing edge of clearing. So we believe it's a small addition that could merit an order of condition for this project to move forward. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
True comments?
Just my comments are that the proposed home addition is within the 50-foot setback, or just beyond 50 foot to the wetlands, but within 50 to the coastal bank. Area proposed addition is legally altered landscaped backyard. Project falls under a waiver of standards or waiver request of standards. And that the proposed addition is very minor in scope, will not adversely impact the performance standards for coastal bank. I apologize, I put down inland, it's coastal bank. And for freshwater wetlands, mitigation was calculated out using our chart under the waiver section, and will serve to enhance the buffer zone to the freshwater wetlands. So I think when you look at the waiver standards, the criterion, which is demonstration of need, what degree is the work in the scope of work minor, moderate, or major, I would put it in the minor category, and I think the mitigation offsets any potential impact that this addition would have. So it meets the waiver request, and I would recommend to close an issue. Caitlin has comments from Board of Health and Building Department.
Sure. Building had no comments, and Board of Health stated, note the location of the septic system and restrict equipment, vehicle traffic over non-loading bearing components. Access to all septic components must be maintained. Thank you.
Drew, would you characterize this as a net environmental benefit?
Yes, I would. I don't think that there will be any impact to the freshwater wetland, which you can see is right back here. This is the wetland. This is right along the top of coastal bank. And this is the area right here, the lower left photo of the expansion. So you're not looking at any sort of runoff, any change in runoff patterns. So I think it's really innocuous, and to have some planting here in this buffer area will serve to create a buffer where really none exists currently. So, thank you.
If I can also add, two other benefits that this project would do is the 53 square feet of proposed addition. It's also 53 square feet of reduction in lawn. We're also proposing dry well for the roof runoff.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you, Raul. All right, questions and comments from our commissioners?
I have a question.
Yes, Paul.
Raul, I'm looking at the diagram of the dry well itself, and I see the inlet. I assume that's anything running off on the ground. And is that a pipe that goes into the dry well?
So actually, that's my mistake. We have a dry well that we typically use. We trade it for using for pull down draws, and that little inlet that shows to the top, it was a carryover from the detail that I use from a pool. But no, this dry wells is going to be inlets on the side, not through the top.
So it's completely buried?
Completely buried, yeah.
Okay. Okay. I was wondering if there were things coming in at two different ways.
Good question. All right, so no other questions from the commissioners? Is anyone here in the audience to make commentary in this hearing? All right, hearing none, and if there's no further discussion, we'll entertain a motion. This is an NOI.
I would make a motion for George E. Wakeman Jr. and Tina M. Trefacini, trustees, 76 Greenwall Road. Recommend close an issue with mitigation plannings and maintenance.
Thank you, Charlie. If there's no further discussion, do I hear a second?
A second.
Thank you, Brian. Now voting. Brian?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Charlie?
Yes.
Alex?
Yes.
I vote aye as well. Motion carries. Thanks, Raul. Now calling the 6:15 hearing for Paul M. and Helen C. Zamito, trustees, 4 Spoondrift Circle. Proposed construction of a swimming pool retaining walls, permitting and relocation of existing patio, shed and mitigation plantings. Representative is BSS Design. This is an NOI.
Yep. I'm Andrew Garrelay, landscape architect, Yarmouth Port Design Group. Tom from BSS was unable to make it to the meeting tonight, but I'm responsible for most everything on the plan. I don't know if you want to start with the. I'm sorry, Drew. Do you usually speak before or?
Oh no, you can go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, then I'll just put the plan up for you.
Yeah. So this existing house has. Both, we've got Spoondrift Cove, which of course is tidal, and then there's also a isolated wetland, vegetated wetland along the north border of the property, as Drew's pointing out there. And they wanted to do a swimming pool, and it's rather limited on where we can put that on the site without getting into the 50-foot setback, but I managed to find a little spot. And I guess there's another underlying issue here is some point in the past there was a shed put in and a patio put in near the isolated wetland, vegetated wetland, which was not permitted. So what we're proposing to do in that area is to move the shed further away from the wetland, reduce what's there of the patio to a minimum amount between the house and the shed, and mitigate for, restore all of the area that was disturbed and mitigate for the area that we're not restoring where the shed is going and the part of the patio that's remaining. So that's one issue. And then, of course, we have the pool area that is just outside of the 50-foot setback, so it's between the 50 and 100. It is sloped land, so we have around the swimming pool a retaining wall that's holding the pool up at elevation 10, plus or minus. And we need to cut into the slope a little bit on the south side of the pool. So there's another little retaining wall that's retaining the landward side of that wall. It's not a huge swimming pool. It's 18 by 30, and it has a spa as well in there. And we have mitigation for that as well. Some of the mitigation, well, I'll say that the nearer wetland is the isolated wetland, but we also had lawn going toward the edge of the tidal area, and we put some mitigation. We added 5 feet of vegetation along that strip of land, even though it's the farther away water body. It just seemed like something we should take care of. And the bulk of the mitigation is going around the freshwater isolated vegetated wetland. I did some stuff in color there to kind of show what was going on. So the blue area is the remaining part of the existing patio. The bright green area is both where the shed was and where the current patio is being removed from. And the brown area is the new location of the shed. Pool equipment would be on the uphill side of the pool, away from the wetland. Also, there's a kayak rack. I'm sorry, I'm going all over the place on you, Drew. Right at the top of the screen, there's a kayak rack that's out on the lawn area now. And I thought it would be a better idea to move it closer to the pier and restore the area nearest to the vegetated wetland. The restoration plantings are quite a variety of plants and strata. I just got to look at my plan here for a second. The bigger plants are eastern red cedar that are going to be right near the area where we're removing the patio from. We do have 5 trees that are going to come down where the pool is going. That's on a chart on there as well. So they're all in the 50 to 100, not within the 50. And they include a double 4-inch cherry, a 9-inch white pine, a 5-inch white pine, a 15-inch white pine, and a 12-inch sycamore maple. So I'm hoping to mitigate for those by putting in those large eastern red cedars in that mitigation area closest to the wetland, and supplementing with winterberry, inkberry, northern bayberry, sweet pepperbush, pasture rose, and sweet fern as well. Trying to think if there's anything else. So and most of that mitigation is going to be going, aside from the area that's being restored from the patio, it's all going to be lawn removed. So it's quite significant, I think.
Thank you. Drew, comments?
Sure. So, as Andrew had stated, there was a discovery of that shed and patio area, and I think he did a good job, and we had talked about what would be a good way to address that, where they could be kept after the fact, but move further away from the wetland, and then providing mitigation for their existing footprint, which will soon be changed based on what you see on the plan. So I think that was a good solution to that issue, because it is something, sheds and patios are something that could be permittable, but had we had the chance to permit it, we likely would have had it set back further away from the wetland, which is what is proposed as part of this. Also, as Andrew had stated, is tight area to keep the pool out of the 50-foot, so that was accomplished. As you can see, it's right along the 50-foot setback, but has been kept out of the 50-foot setback to the freshwater wetland and also to the creek. And there is coastal bank, as you can see on the plan. Coastal bank is actually much further upland than where you see this embankment here, which is armored along the cove area. And it's really by slope definition. The whole lot, was landscaped, the topography changed, and that change qualified it as coastal bank. So its main performance standard, even though it's mostly lawn, is a vertical buffer to storm damage. It's not a sediment source bank, it's not a vegetated bank, it's just lawn with the slope criterion within the flood zone that meets the definition of coastal bank. And again, the area of the pool, I'll show you some images. Let's see here. Pool area is roughly in this right here, this area of lawn, and there's a couple of trees that Andrew said were proposed to be removed to accommodate. So top left photo here is looking down. These staking right here shows the staking of the pool footprint and then the work limit behind, as well as some staking of the resource areas. So in there, I think these are the trees, some of the trees to be removed back here. Is that correct?
Yes, the clump is the cherries,
Yeah.
and the large tree is the sycamore maple, which is an invasive species.
Right. And just a couple other photos. This is showing the buffer zone out here towards the cove area. Again, you've got lawn going right up to the water, so it's good to see there's a vegetated buffer being provided here near the top of this bank. And then this is the freshwater isolated wetland here, work limit. And again, this is where the area where you're going to see lawn proposed to be removed and replaced with mitigation plantings. And just a couple more images. Again, this is the freshwater wetland here. There's the existing shed and patio, which was put in without a permit. So this area here where he shows the staking, this is all to be removed in the shed. And then the shed will be placed up in this area here with the patio to remain in this whole footprint back here. And the stakes on back is where you'll see more mitigation plantings. So, let's see if I have anything. Oh, you said 5 trees proposed to be removed outside the 50-foot, with 10 trees proposed to be planted closer to the wetland. Additional mitigation of native plantings proposed to create a buffer zone to the creek area and enhance buffer zone to isolated wetland, where there really currently is no buffer zone in either area. All native plantings, all of high wildlife habitat and value. I believe the project meets the performance standards for isolated wetland, coastal bank, and land under ocean. All proposed work is outside the 50-foot setback, and calculations from our mitigation chart were used to determine the amount of mitigation. And as I'd stated, the location is really, I see as a net environmental benefit to provide a buffer zone to these wetland resource areas where currently none exists. So recommend to close an issue. Now, Caitlin has some Board of Health and building comments.
Building states that the project is subject to ZBA continued hearing on 4/13/22, so I guess that was yesterday. And the Board of Health states to note the location of the septic system and restrict equipment, vehicle traffic over non-load bearing components. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, it didn't go to ZBA, it was the ARC, and it got approved by the ARC, New Seabury ARC.
I'd just like to say this is a very impressive mitigation arrangement. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
I don't often see ones that look this good for the area.
I had some good discussion with Caitlin on the site, which was helpful.
Oh, fantastic. Questions and comments from our commissioners? Don't let me down, Paul.
I'm all set.
All right, questions and comments from the audience? There's none, and there's no more discussion. We'll entertain a motion.
I would make a motion motion for the application of Paul M. and Helen C. Meadow, trustees for Spoondrift Circle, to close and issue a condition of monitoring and maintenance of all mitigation plantings.
Thank you. If there's no further discussion, do I hear a second?
I'll second that, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Now voting. Brian?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Charlie?
Yes.
Alex?
Yes.
I vote aye as well. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sure. Yeah.
Thank you.
The same as what you would have on record. I think that's. So there's two different, one's existing, one's proposed.
Will look like proposed. Now calling the 6:18 hearing for Charles and Ellen Horn, 58 Cuyahoga Avenue. Proposed demolition and reconstruction of single-family home and septic system upgrade. Representative is Cape and Island. Representative is Horsley Witten Group. This is Nanaway.
Hi, good evening. My name is Janet Bernardo. I'm a professional civil engineer with the Horsley Witten Group. With me is Chuck Horn, homeowner and applicant. The existing home is located at 58 Cuyahoga Avenue, adjacent to, and it abuts John's Pond in the rear. It is a non-conforming lot. It is only like 14,073 square feet. The zoning is 40,000 right now. It was built in 1950, and the Horns have owned the home since 2003, about almost 20 years. The goal for this application is to remove the existing house. If you've been out there, it's a relatively small house, 3 bedrooms. There's an existing septic system in the front lawn that will remain. We are going to raise the house to be in a walkout basement, so the driveway and the house will be pitched towards Cuyahoga Avenue instead of towards John's Pond. There's a proposed dry well in the driveway that will capture the driveway runoff as well as the portion of the house runoff. There's another dry well on the right side of the back corner that will capture, do you see it up in the right back corner? Yeah, back there. There's a little circle. Yeah, thanks. That will capture some of the roof runoff and the yard drainage that's going towards John's Pond on that edge. There is one tree within the buffer zone that's at the corner of the front corner that will come down. So we're proposing 3 trees within the buffer zone, and there's also 3 trees outside of the buffer zone, but that's just to have a line of nice trees. 2 trees came down that were adjacent to John's Pond. They were right on the bank. They came down in October 2021. The homeowner is interested in adding some wetland mitigation along the bank, but we weren't sure. We're basically the existing deck is about 19 is 21.9 feet from the wetland flag 9, and the proposed deck, which it will be 10 feet up in the air where the existing deck is basically on the ground. The proposed deck is 4 feet further away from the wetland, so it's 25 feet away from the wetland. The existing house corner, the closest house corner is 32 feet away, and the proposed house corner is also 32 feet away. So we're pulling the decks back and raising the deck up in the air compared to just laying it on the surface, and there's a large section of the existing deck that will be removed, and that will become vegetation, grass, lawn. So we weren't sure because we're actually reducing the amount of deck and house in the 50-foot buffer zone, how to calculate out the mitigation area. So I did it a few different ways, but I wasn't really sure, and whether the commission was interested in replacing the trees that came down, but we thought it was very close, and there's a lot of wind that comes across John's Pond, and maybe another tree would be a problem because it could get blown over again. So we're happy to work with the conservation agent and come up with a planting plan and add some high bush blueberries, some inkberry. The Ellen Horn, the homeowner, is very into her landscaping and would really enjoy the opportunity to plant some different species along the wetland edge. So we just wanted to understand what kind of area we should be looking at, but are happy to work with you and make that happen.
Thank you. Drew, comments?
Yeah, just to add on to that, so we did have a discussion on this just to go over the expanded area, and I know the proposed house is not moving any closer than the existing home as far as setback from the bank in John's Pond, but it is occupying a greater footprint within the buffer zone, so that's what we need to work on to figure out proper mitigation.
Yeah.
While taking into account what you're, what you're pulling back.
The link that the calculation that you sent me talked about altered area and being the lawn being all altered. So basically I was like, are we talking about the house and the deck as the calculation, or the entire lawn as the calculation? So then I got confused. Sorry.
Yeah, it's really the square footage of new structure within the buffer zone.
So I did do that, and so I compared the impervious structure and the deck, and then the existing and the proposed, and so I have that number and the different square footages per that calculation. And then with that, if you can confirm that I did it correctly, it was like 457 square feet. Okay. It's not a very large lot, it's only 14,000 square foot. So, we're happy to work with you and make it a reasonable area.
Okay. Yeah, the calculation sounds about right based on the expanded areas. What I had suggested to the commission was to, give a couple of options for your consideration, which was to have the applicant consultant work with us to come up with a mitigation plan, or if you wish to see a mitigation plan prior to rendering a decision, you can ask for a continuance until that plan is created and presented to you. So either way is fine. But I know you've deferred to us to work with applicants in the past in similar scenarios, so that's why I put that in there as an option. As far as the proposal itself, as I already stated, it's not moving any closer. It's actually being pulled back from the resource area. No proposal to encroach. You do have a situation where you've got, similar to previous application, you've got existing lawn going right up to the resource area. This deck right here, when we've gone out to do a site inspection, I had wondered about this when I went back and checked previous permitting. It actually is a permitted part of the seasonal dock. It's been in place for literally decades, and so it has been reflected in previous permit application and approved as a grandfathered structure with this seasonal dock component coming out from this platform into the pond. That's all covered under previous permits. That was just a question I had when Aaron and I had gone out to the site to look at it, and since found the permit authorizing that pre-existing structure. No increase in bedroom or increase in flow. I think I covered all the other points about mitigation, so.
We are, just as a point, we're going to the Zoning Board of Appeals on the 27th? Yes. Because of being within 50 feet of the pond.
Caitlin?
Sure. So, as you had stated, you will be going to ZBA, and the Board of Health stated that there's no septic design plan or building plans have been submitted for BOH review permitting, and the project site is in Zone 2.
It is in Zone 2?
Yes.
So have you had any conversation with Board of Health?
No, have you had a conversation with Board of Health yet?
No, not that I know.
Yeah, the system was just inspected. We are planning on removing the pump chamber and the septic tank, and so that it could be a gravity line, but the leaching bed itself will remain in place. It was recently inspected.
Okay.
And we are, that was our intention, is to, after we work with the Conservation Commission and Zoning Board, is to submit to Board of Health.
We'll need to condition Board of Health approval.
We did have a question about the concrete driveway. Is that also pitched towards the road? Would that be something we were wondering if that could be a pervious surface as opposed to concrete?
It would just gravel driveway instead of a asphalt driveway.
I think it was proposed for asphalt, right?
It's proposed for asphalt, but they're asking if it can be pervious. And so that would be gravel like you have now, similar to what is out there right now.
Correct.
Because that's why one reason we were trying to put in the dry well is to kind of avoid some of that gravel and stone that kind of works its way through. So you'd prefer
It's
it to
actually,
be
I mean,
asphalt, I assume.
Just throwing it out there. So it's
Yeah,
not a
I guess
requirement. I know
the
a portion of it
homeowner
is-
would prefer it to be asphalt. That was the intention of the dry well, so that it would pitch it towards Cayuga, but capture the runoff in a dry well and try to avoid some of the extra sediment and sand that was kind of clogging up the dry well.
Would we need to condition Board of Health approval if we were to advance this?
Yes, I mean, we wouldn't, you could make that part of the motion. There would be no issuance of the permit until Board of Health provides commentary.
All right. Commissioners, any questions? Good. Is there anyone in the audience who has commentary to make on this hearing? Hearing none, I'm going to make a motion that we close an issue, the 621 hearing for John and Ann, 26 Little Neck Lane.
Wait,
Well,
I'm sorry.
that would have been, the final meeting. Just looking to speed things up. So I will motion that we close an issue, the NOI for Charles and Ellen Horn at 58 Cayuga Ave, with the condition that you work with the conservation agent for the mitigation plantings, and that final approval is given from the Board of Health.
Second.
Thank you, Charlie. Any discussion? Voting. Brian?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Charlie?
Yes.
Alex?
Yes.
I vote aye as well. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, yeah, great. Thank you very much.
Since I already made a motion on this. Now calling the 6:21 hearing for John and Anne Marie Beasley, 26 Little Neck Lane. Proposed construction of a seawall, associated grading, and restoration plantings. Representatives, Cape and Islands Engineering. This is an NOI.
Good evening. For the record, Raul Lizardi from Cape and Islands Engineering, representing the applicant and the homeowners, Mr. and Mrs. Beasley. The project consists of an existing single-family residence lot. This neighborhood of Little Neck Lane has been developed since the 1960s. In particular, this one lot has had a single-family residence since 1968, according to town records and files in the town filing system. The property also got approvals for reconstruction of the house back in 2007, and it obtained a certificate of compliance for the work that was done for the reconstruction of the house. What's happening at the property today is that the existing coastal bank, which is on the back of the property adjacent to Aquay Bay, is slumping down. There's approximately some 18 inches or close to 2 feet that has dropped from the back of the foundation of the house. There are 2 support posts for the existing deck. One of them is completely undermined, and there is a second one that is beginning to be undermined. So the slope at this property exceeds a 45% slope. In fact, it's more like a 75% slope closest to where the slumping is the worst. At the toe of this bank, there is a vertical drop of about 3 feet. At that point, the toe of the bank meets the coastal beach. And then about 6 feet or 7 feet later, there's a salt marsh. And after the salt marsh, there is Aquay Bay. So what we're proposing to do to stabilize and control the problem at this property is to do a retaining wall above the salt marsh at the edge of the existing toe of the bank. I know we received staff report, and there was some comments about alternative designs options. In the past, we have done soft solutions as an alternative to stabilize banks, but those are the cases where we don't have a structure in imminent danger or where the slopes of the banks are already against the structures. We've done the soft solutions where the bank is just holding back a yard, so we have plenty of land to work with, and the soft solution, it's intended to biodegrade and eventually become soil. So the conditions in the future could occur again once that biodegradable solution is no longer holding back the soils. In this case, if we were to use a biodegradable coir logs, which they're either 12 inches or 18 inches in diameter, and what they look like is what you typically see as wattles for limits of work on project sites. So there are tubes that you line one on top of the other. The slope of those tubes will become 1-to-1. The existing corner of the foundation is at elevation 14. The toe of this bank is at elevation 2.5. There will be an 11.5-foot height of coir logs if we were to use coir logs. The corner of the foundation is 14 feet from the toe of the bank. So the coir logs will come almost to 3 feet from that corner of the house. It will definitely be underneath the 2 posts for the deck, and that is a solution that we believe is not practical. I myself don't feel comfortable making a design of such. So that's why we chose the proposed repair, or not repair, but the control in the form of a vertical wall. So this is a sheet piling wall. We've done it in other projects. So it's a 5-foot sheet pile. It's vertical for that first 8 inches that is occupied by the vinyl sheet pilings. And on top of that 5 feet height that we gain, we can do a less steep slope. The soils at the side are coarse sands and cobbles. Sand typically finds a level of static kind of control at a degree of 30 degrees. This slope at 70 or something degrees is too steep for stable sands. This proposal is trying to get it closer to that 30 degrees of sands, but not quite. What we're proposing is a 3-to-2 slope after approximately 4 feet behind the sheet wall. But that is closer to that angle of the sands to be stable. What we're also proposing is to cover the area with jute mat. So we install the wall, the new slope that we create, we install jute mat. The jute mats are stapled into the soil, and then the area is plugged with grasses. The grasses that we're selecting is because of the root system that they have is deep enough to stabilize the soil. One of the things we noticed at the site, all of the trees that are near the toe of the bank are already leaning towards the towards the bay, and that's actually exacerbating the condition of erosion. So the leaning of these trees, eventually the wind will bring them completely down, and then more erosion will come after those roots, the root systems for these trees loosen more soils. So we propose to remove these trees, install this wall, regrade the area behind the wall, and plant it with grasses, native grasses, to stabilize the site. There is one existing drainage pipe that's currently draining onto the bank. So we inform the homeowner that has to be removed, that picture on the bottom right. That has to be removed because that does not help the conditions on site. But that's not the source of the problem at the site. I don't know when this condition has started, but in 2007, that was not the case. The poles that were installed were subsurface, and suddenly the homeowner just realized that that deck is now in the air for that corner, and has asked us to do some investigation and solutions for this project. The reconstruction of those posts, what we're asking the homeowner to do is try to do a different type of bracing instead of keeping those posts at that location. Maybe the posts can move further back, and there could be some more cantilevering of that deck so that the posts are not that far into the downslope. No matter what, there will continue to be a downslope at this location. It is just going to be a lesser slope. Both properties adjacent to this house already have retaining walls along the shoreline. This is the only one from these three back-to-back-to-back houses that don't have a shoreline protection. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Thank you, Raul. Drew, comments?
So, Raul, you had said that both properties on either side have retaining walls?
I guess I'm mistaken. I think the one that I saw retaining walls is the south side. I'm sorry, the left is north.
I didn't see any retaining walls on the surrounding properties.
The left house is a retaining wall. In fact, the house itself is the retaining wall.
Right. This one, yeah, on this side here. If you were. Is this the side you're talking about in the upper left image?
Yeah, that's north.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, it certainly is a tricky spot, and I don't, I don't deny that it is a situation that needs to be addressed. And I thank Raul for providing clarification on the possibility or feasibility of doing a soft solution. I know that we have done, and we have permitted soft solutions in the past, and it could be based on what I heard that it may not be feasible in this area, but I do want to just make note that a number of soft solutions that we have permitted in the past, some of them even in situations where the foundation was very close to the wetland resource area, like one on Taffrail most recently that was replaced with a bulkhead, started out as a soft solution. But many of these soft solutions, when they were not installed in accordance with the plan. They were installed sloppily. They were not maintained. And I do want to add some clarification about what a soft solution is supposed to do. When you say covered over the soil, it's also supposed to be planted. to basically recapitulate and rebuild the bank, not just to put soil over it so it can get washed away and destroyed. It has to be replanted, and the whole goal of a soft solution, particularly in areas like this, is to rebuild the bank. So I just want to clarify that that's, that is the purpose of a soft solution, and it does need to be maintained, and if it's not maintained, it certainly will fail. But I've seen a number of these soft solutions that simply just were not installed properly, and that just led to imminent failure. And when you've got improper installation and then zero maintenance, of course it's going to fail. So I did want to have, because Regulation 16 under our bylaw does require that they demonstrate, the applicant demonstrates that no other method of protecting the building other than the proposed engineered structure is feasible. So I did want to have that information as part of this application. And again, I thank Raul for providing that information, but it should be in the project narrative for future projects like this. You should have that information ready to go. So it's, like I said, you could tell from the pictures, this is a situation where you've got structural integrity being compromised. And here you can see these are the sonotubes for the existing deck. There's the other sonotubes, the other side of the deck, and yeah, they're definitely being compromised. The whole structure is being compromised, and then right behind it is the foundation to the house. One of the questions I had, Raul, is grass the only planting that is feasible here, or can we look at shrubs? I mean, I look at this because this is a situation that I have no doubt that other homeowners along this stretch with an equally steep bank running along this entire stretch, you're going to see future applications like this, and the thought of all of this vegetation being cleared out and replaced with grasses, granted native grasses, you're dramatically changing the habitat and dynamic of this area with that type of planting. So I just want to be kind of cautious moving forward. If there's an opportunity for woody shrubs instead of grasses, I understand trees just aren't practical here, but I think that there should be other varieties other than just grasses for mitigation.
Yeah, in the cross section, if you look at the detail, if I were to put some shrubbery species, the first 4 feet behind the wall, I have it at a lesser slope, 4 to 1.5. If I were to put any woody shrubs, that would be the location. I would not do shrubs on the upslope. It will just be that the wind will catch it and we'll lose the soils again. That bottom portion, that 4 feet, it's relatively flat enough that a shrub should be able to do okay in that location. So if that's a condition that the board feels it's appropriate, it's something that we can do. At the site, you can see on the plan, there are several trees along the shore that are called out to be removed. In particular, 1, 2, 3, 5 trees. There's others that are on the slope, but they can stay because what we're proposing to do will not really affect them. The sloping we're doing behind the wall, it doesn't affect all the trees on the slope, but there's a couple of ones that are already leaning and we're proposing to remove them. So in place of those trees, I can see an equitable amount of shrubs in terms of square footage or something like that within that 4 feet.
And as far as the grading of the bank, I didn't really see in the narrative like how that's going to be accomplished as far as methodology. I know that you're going to require swamp mats to be put over the salt marsh, and any damage to the salt marsh, as explained in the narrative, will be restored because that's really the only way you're going to access this site. And
So yeah, we got in touch with one of the contractors that typically does this type of work. Accessing the site at the toe of the bank to do the work for the wall installation cannot be done from the upland. Right. For those who went to the site, there's no access along the sides of the house. So the intention is to access the site through a barge at high tide, unload a machine onto the beach side, put mats down on the beach and the marsh, and do the installation. However, for the bringing of material, they can do a chute from the south side of the house where there's a generator and there's sort of like a path. They can wheel materials or use a small skid lift to bring material and shoot down the bank to regrade the area and then just spread the material once it reaches the back of the new wall. But yeah, the material is not going to be from the water side at that point. It will be from the upside.
So you're adding material to grade, you're not digging into the bank at all?
The initial installation of the sheet pile,
For the sheet
we'll
pile,
have
yeah.
to clean up that existing toe of the bank. So there'll be some excavation there. But for the most part, everything is getting built up, not removal.
Okay. And in the project description, it also mentioned, and I know you just recently clarified about the leaning trees, and I agree they should come out, because if they were to come out naturally, they would do more damage to the bank, particularly ones down at the bottom, which the image show the commissioners. So these right here, leaning out over, you can see the bank is already being undercut here along the coastal beach. So some of these trees leaning out, like this one, for instance, I completely understand the ones that are identified on the plan, why they should be removed. But the narrative also says that all saplings, it says everything is to be flush cut. So are you saying that's not what's proposed? Are you changing the
So at the
narrative?
bottom, where we're putting the wall, we're building the wall 5 foot high and filling everything behind it. If we put any fill behind it and we leave a sapling, it is going to die. By the time we get to approximately, if we look at the plan detail, 6 feet back, there's other saplings at that location, and the proposed grades will meet the grades at that point. Those saplings can remain. But anything that's all along the wall area and within that 4 feet, it most likely gets removed because it's not going to survive.
Sure. Yeah, understood.
Other comments?
I think that covers everything.
Caitlin?
I'm sure the Board of Health states just to note the location of the septic system and restrict equipment, vehicle traffic over non-load bearing components.
Commissioners? I'd like to see a lot more biodiversity in what you replant. I understand that the slope necessitates certain plants, and you can't just have the soil blowing away once you've refilled it if you plant certain things. But if you could do your best to work with the conservation agent and give us some more native species that don't completely change or at least limit change the existing habitat.
Yeah, we're amenable to a condition. In that 4 feet, I'm comfortable with woody shrubs.
All right.
And I would just make a recommendation that if you make a motion to close an issue, that you include monitoring and maintenance of all restoration on the bank. I'm almost inclined to require a performance bond for this, because this is pretty substantial work, and we want to make sure that it's done right and in accordance with what we see on the plan. Or at the very least, weekly monitoring reports during the construction phase. I would say that should be part of the motion. It's weekly monitoring reports, and I think that at a minimum, a 3-year monitoring and maintenance agreement to make sure that all plantings and the bank restoration is done properly and takes hold and is successful.
Now I do have a question. What is the criteria for requiring a performance bond? What would we have to do?
So we would need to get a cost estimate. The last time we requested a performance bond was for wetland replication of Barnstable Road, where a portion of the wetland was being filled in, so there was 2-to-1 ratio mitigation, and we required a $10,000 performance bond for that. And that was subsequently released because the project got a certificate of compliance. It was in compliance. So the first thing I would recommend is to try and get, what the cost estimate would be. That could be supplied to the commission. If you wanted to withhold, a close an issue until you got that, and then you could make as part of the motion that you are requiring a performance bond in the amount of whatever would be sufficient to cover the cost of this. And that would be held by the town treasurer until such time as the project goes for a certificate of compliance inspection.
Okay.
And then based on that and continued monitoring and maintenance, the bond would be released.
You know, if we were unfamiliar with the contractor doing the work, I would be right behind you on that one. And I don't really oppose doing the bond, but we've seen their work time and time again. And they do what they say they're going to do in most cases. How arduous is the performance bond to?
It's not that it's not a lot of work. It's really just you just make it part of the motion, but you do want to get an estimate of what the cost would be, so you can have the bond of sufficient amount to cover anything that may not be done.
The cost of restoration of any work that wasn't completed is
the cost of the restoration portion of the work.
Thoughts on this?
I also just wanted to mention too, for salt marsh restoration, if need be, due to the construction equipment, that we have a boilerplate condition that there'll be a 2-to-1 replacement required, so that would most likely be incorporated into the sort of conditions.
There's no further discussion. We'll entertain a motion. Keep in mind, there are recommended conditions of either weekly monitoring, weekly monitoring reports, and a 5-year, a minimum of 3-year monitoring. Also, it's been suggested that a performance bond be issued to the town until we issue the order of conditions.
Ralph, do you have any estimate of what the cost of this restoration?
I don't have that, no. But we already have communications with the contractors, so I can ask for a cost estimate.
Okay.
The cost estimate will probably not include what needs to be repaired on the deck,
Right.
but it will include everything that's coastal bank related.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I would recommend that the commission require a performance bond. I just think it's a lot of disturbance, a lot of things,
Can go wrong.
Yeah, could go wrong, and sensitive steep bank, accessing over salt marsh. So we want to make sure that when it's all said and done, that this is done properly. And I think a performance bond is really the best way to ensure that.
All right, Chair. In that case, if there's no further discussion, I'll make a motion to close an issue with the condition that we have weekly monitoring reports issued to the conservation agent, a 5-year monitoring agreement, and a performance bond issued and worked out with the conservation agent based on the cost to restore any work that does not go as planned.
Second.
Any discussion? Voting. Brian?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Charlie?
Yes.
Alex?
Yes.
I vote aye as well. Motion carries. Thank you,
Thank
Raul.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Carl.
Okay.
Ms. Claproot has been very patient, so we'll
Yes.
skip to her.
Yes, absolutely.
Do I get points for that? Good evening, all. It's great to be here. Oh, I appreciate it. My name is Marjorie Claproot. I live at 195 Waterway in Mashpee. I've been a homeowner here in Mashpee for about 30 years. My husband, Chris Benizolo, and I got married at the Papanesset Inn. It's sort of hard to leave once you've had that experience. But we moved here permanently for ever, 6 years ago. So I'm delighted to be here. I appreciate your consideration of my letter of interest in being appointed to the Conservation Commission. If you have an opening or an associate opening, I've been trying to get more involved with the town and with what's going on, particularly as it concerns the environment, conservation, wildlife management. I come to you with experience within the legislature. I served in the Massachusetts House of Representatives for 3 terms, representing the 8th Norfolk District, and I've been very active as I can be down here, volunteering, and currently am most involved with Mashpee Clean Waters, and Mary is a really hard taskmaster, so she's been a great source of education. Also Save Papaneset Bay, I've been involved with just forever because the spit is just sacred, holy ground to me. But I've been happy to work with them as an associate for the last couple of years. So with that, it sort of spurred me on to say, gosh, wouldn't it be great if I could spend more time learning what you all know and adding to the interest and the passion that I have for bringing what I can to the table. So, if there are any questions, love to hear them.
Thank you so much for coming before us, for your interest, and as I said in the email, your experience will make you a really wonderful asset to this commission. I appreciate it.
That's so great, thank you.
And I've, sorry.
By all means.
I've had the pleasure of meeting Marjorie on a few occasions out on Papaneset Island, dealing with some projects out there, and getting to know her all of that time, and considering her background, I think she'd make a wonderful addition to the commission, and very happy that you're interested in serving to protect the town's natural resources. So,
you're here.
Yeah, how do I? Drew reminds me that I was lucky enough, or I don't know if it's condolences or congratulations, but I was elected chair of the Bright Coves Council, which put me on the Peninsula Council board, which is very intimidating because they're all incredibly bright and have a lot to say. But so, Drew, is there anything else that I need to do?
Well, the commission, if there's any back and forth, or if there's no more questions for Marjorie, then I would ask that the commission take a vote to endorse Marjorie for associate commissioner, and then if that vote takes place, we then draft a letter to the office of the town manager asking to be placed on the Board of Selectmen agenda, where they would do the same thing.
Great.
Is there any further discussion? Oh.
I have, I guess, technical, questions. I wasn't here, so I seen Brad's resignation or something was on there, so that
Yes.
would mean that we have at-large seat on the commission. I think that we should go to maybe some of the associate members to see if there was an interest from any of them to take that spot. If not, I think that Marjorie would make a great addition to the board. And I also think that, with these processes, we should do our due diligence on our part to make sure that, anyone that comes on the boards, kind of get background on, if you're on any other boards, occupation, so on and so forth, because I think that sometimes conflicts of interest might arise and we don't really know, and I think that that's something that we should start, knowing about beforehand, and then rather than getting on the board and then somebody's sitting here and they have to recuse themselves, and then you kind of ask yourself why. So I think that that's just something that we should, be more mindful of on this commission, as well as, the Board of Selectmen, the Select Board, or anybody else. I think that, you have a very extensive background. I think you'll be an asset to the board, and you being a former representative and being in the political arena, I think you can, respect that too. And I think that we need to just, I just want to bring that to the awareness of the commission, not saying anything against, Marjorie. I do look forward to supporting you. I think there's just the process and technical things we should work out.
Okay.
Is there any conflicts of interest, anything that you can think of that you're associated with that might fall under what Mr. Whedon was talking about?
I think it's terrific that you raised it, and I'm happy to say I don't. I think I learned, and those of us who have, and I think it applies to all of you, if you've been involved in the politics from the ground and grassroots, you learn pretty quickly where your priorities are, and you really cannot serve well the public as an elected official or as an appointed manager, member of a commission that has the gravitas. So the Conservation Commission has always been the one that I turned to most when I was in the legislature, the one that was most active. My mother was on the Conservation Commission in the Boston area, and so it's a personal choice not to be involved. So I don't have any holdings, and I'm a law school dropout, which is sort of a badge of honor. I dropped out of BU Law School, though, to run for lieutenant governor with John Silver, which might be, in retrospect, not a great decision for my career at the time. But I'm well aware. I'm a great student of the law. Believe deeply that public service is still the most honorable, noble of callings. So, I think I must say, Mr. Whedon, that's an excellent suggestion for anyone that comes and seeks to serve and be part of.
How long before Brad's resignation would be effective, since he's requested the resignation?
So it would really be after the Board of Selectmen officially recognizes his resignation?
At the next meeting?
I would imagine so, yeah. I'm not sure when I'll find out when they'll place it on the agenda. And I don't believe they need anything other than just a letter from any commissioner who wishes to resign. You don't need to make a motion or anything like that to endorse it or anything. It's really just once they receive the letter and then they put it on their own agenda.
Right.
Just to recognize the resignation. And then after that, I would imagine it's open to, it's an open seat.
Well, why don't, I'd propose that to address Brian's concerns, and this isn't a motion or anything, this is open discussion. We put the vote for her candidacy on the next agenda.
Sure.
That will give us all time to, read up on your extensive background and satisfy the concerns that I think were pretty valid and probably should be a policy that we craft together going forward.
And also that will allow time to see if the existing associate members have any interest in taking the at-large seat. And if not, if you have interest, once we vet that out, so that'll allow a little more time to get.
Are you asking me?
If you are interested, but we want to give our existing associates.
I think that's very appropriate that you should.
Yeah, yeah. So.
They precede, they have seniority. I would be happy and honored to serve as an associate member, as an at-large member. And I really appreciate your time, and I am looking forward in whatever way and whatever role you recommend to be part of the big solution. My big badge of honor is the big dig, and I'm still alive, standing. So you can use that as perseverance and strength. Yeah.
It's the only resume item you needed.
Fred Salvucci was a tough taskmaster.
Well, in that case, should we do a roll call vote to put this on the agenda, or just put it on the agenda?
We'll just put it on the agenda.
Very good.
We don't need to do a roll call vote.
All right. Thank you so much.
That's great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
Good night.
Okay, so we can move to we have 3 sets of meeting minutes to approve. The first meeting minutes are from January 27th, 2022. And those present tonight to vote on those meeting minutes are Chad Smith, Charlie Dalton, Paul Colombo, Brian Whedon, and Alexandra Zolo.
Do I hear a motion to, first of all, is there any discussion? Yes, Paul.
There is one set of minutes, and I don't have them in front of me, but everything that was in all 3 sets looked fine to me, but there was one particular set. It was our vote to adjourn, and it was recorded as a vote for a negative determination.
Oh.
I just caught it as I was reading it at the very end.
Okay.
You might want to, and I don't have them in front of me.
I don't have them, no.
I thought I had them on this
Do
computer.
we want to
but I-
postpone?
Maybe we'll just postpone just so we can.
It was just the one. Yeah, it was just the one.
We have all done that.
Yeah. All right, so why don't we withhold the meeting minutes for now until we discover
Yeah,
which
I
set
thought I brought
that
them with
exists,
me,
and we
but I
can make
didn't.
that correction. I already went over Childs River, Brad Sweet. So just moving on to updates. There's no updates on Red Brook Road culvert, other than to say that I would imagine data collection is still ongoing. As the last update, Horsley Witten had asked that the culvert not be plugged up with sandbags until they had a time to put out instrumentation to get data on flow and temperature. So I'd imagine that's still ongoing. I believe they had requested up until the end of this month to continue to collect data. So we'll supply updates as they come in. Upper Quashnet Restoration. So you all should have received, I forwarded an email from our consultant, Neil Price of Horsley Witten Group, that contained the narrative on conceptual restoration alternatives, and then the attachments, which you had to go into a link to see because the file sizes were too large to send those for attachment to an email. So did everyone get those? Receive them? Anybody have a problem opening the file or seeing the documents?
No, I got them.
Just that I downloaded it on my cell phone and I now have no more room on it.
Other than having zero memory left on your computer. Okay, so between now and the 28th, I would just ask that you go through, look at the different scenarios. There's a lot of detailed information behind all the data that was collected. A lot of it is kind of an update on the previous feasibility study done by Haley and Aldrich back in 2007. As you'll probably see if you're familiar with that report too. That's just baseline information on existing flow, stream channel, morphology, all of that kind of baseline information. But essentially there were 3 restoration scenarios presented, that being two different types of partial river realignment, and then a full realignment scenario, and the reasoning and data behind each one of those suggestions. So please take the time just to read through the report, become familiar with it, so that when the April 28th meeting, we'll have Neil Price from Horsley Witten come and do an official presentation on the scenarios, on these restoration alternatives. And not saying the commission has to vote at that time, but at least you want to become familiar, so when Neil presents, you'll have a better idea of each scenario and have any questions or comments at that time. So, is there any questions on that?
Oh, just had a quick update. It was the January 27th.
27th, I just found it.
Minutes.
Yeah.
Oh, we can see.
Contact
Go back
is
to the go back to the meeting minutes. And
I got the others out too.
Okay.
I saw all of them. They all look good except for that.
okay. So why don't we go back to the meeting minutes then, starting with the January 27th, 2022 meeting minutes, and you can include that in the motion to correct that.
Is there any discussion on the approval of the 1/27/22 meeting minutes, besides the error outlined by Paul?
I make a motion to approve the January 27th, 2022 meeting minutes of the Mashpee Conservation Commission with edits.
Any discussion? Is there a second?
I'll second that. Third.
I'll beat you, Charlie. Now voting. Brian?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Charlie?
Yes.
Alex?
Yes.
I vote aye as well. Motion carries. Now,
Sorry. Next set of meeting minutes is the February 10th, 2022, and present at that meeting is Chad Smith, Charlie Dalton, and Paul Colombo.
do we hear a motion on the 2/10/22 or discussion on the meeting minutes?
Mr.
Make a
Chairman,
motion to accept the minutes on the meeting at 10/2/22, or 2/10/22.
Thank you, Charlie. Is there further discussion? Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Now voting. Charlie?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
I vote aye as well. Motion carries.
Thank you. The last set of meeting minutes is February 24th, 2022. Those present tonight who attended that meeting are Charlie Dalton, Paul Colombo, Brian Whedon, and Chad Smith.
Any discussion? We'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes of 2/24/22.
Thank you, Charlie. There's no further discussion. We'll take a second.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Paul. Now voting. Brian?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Charlie?
Yes.
I vote aye as well. Motion carries.
Thank you. Next update is the bylaw review subcommittee. So I had sent out to the subcommittee members, I don't know if I sent it out to all commissioners, but I know I sent it out to the subcommittee. Town council's feedback on the two regulations that we had public scoping for, that being Regulation 12, Mitigation, and 27, Docks and Piers. There were just minor, mostly just spelling and sentence formatting corrections. But one of the points that he brought up was just the terminology, docks, and what that encompasses. So I did offer some clarifying language that the term docks means to include fixed pier, ramp, and float when using the term dock, and putting that into the regulation language to clarify that. So I just wanted to have a discussion if anyone had an issue with that, or you had any different ideas on how to respond to council's comment on that. But I thought that would really lend clarification.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
any other feedback on that? Do you feel that the regulations are good to go to be promulgated on the 28th?
I think so. I'll go with it.
Okay.
I had nothing to add.
Alex, any comments on that? Okay. Okay, so we're going to put those two on April 28th agenda. We'll advertise it in the paper for official promulgation.
Thank you, subcommittee.
Make myself a note here. Okay. Also, discussion on Regulation 30, which I did send out also just to review. And I apologize, I meant to send out some dates for our next meeting, and I will do that tomorrow, so we can sit down and discuss. But kind of also tied to that, and I don't know if you've read in the article in the Mashpee Enterprise about the Board of Health correspondence with some selectmen in deliberating over whether to require IA systems for all septic systems in town based on the criterion of any home being sold, any failed septic inspections, and what's the other?
Any addition?
Any addition, increase in flow. So that's kind of in the works. Just wanted to open up to any discussion if anyone had any thoughts on that, since we're going to be looking at our own regulation to require that within wetlands jurisdiction. But I thought that maybe if commissioners wanted to, submit comments and weigh in on this conversation, we can have that discussion, or you can just submit comments to our office or to the Board of Selectmen to give your thoughts on this, because it definitely should involve our input. So just kind of wanted to open that up to conversation, or if you want to have input and just submit it directly to Board of Health, you can do that as well. So.
I'd like to sorry, go ahead.
Yep, the Board of Health will be attending this Select Board's meeting on April 25th for further discussion regarding this proposed regulation.
I should plan on attending that meeting.
I think one of our commissioners, Mr. Colombo, deserves some credit for advancing this conversation.
Thank you. It has been a dog bone I've been chewing on. I will continue to do so.
Thank you, sir.
I guess just for like a technical point, is it I know the board, the select board, had the meeting, and we were supposed to follow up with them, and that never happened. But has there ever been a situation in the past where boards have, had joint meetings without the board of selectmen calling them? I'm just trying to think of like what, because it's easy if we send a representative like, Chad is the chair or somebody, Drew from the department. But I feel like sometimes it might be easier if we all just were in the room and kind of, heard it all at once and kind of hashed a lot of these things out together. But
Yeah.
I mean, that's just a suggestion, a recommendation. I mean, we could probably check with, legal counsel and the board of the select board.
Sure.
But I think that that's something that we should, possibly look at. I mean, it's more meetings probably for us. We do meet a lot, but so don't a lot of these other boards. So.
Yeah, no, it's a good point to bring up,
idea.
and I personally think that, as many commissioners as possible should attend that meeting just to weigh in on this, because it's a big deal, and there's a lot to discuss. I already know there's a lot of resistance to what was initially proposed, and maybe we can offer ways to kind of fine tune it, and just be part of the process. So, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think that we have to stop waiting on leadership sometimes and start taking things into our own hands.
Yep.
Because if we keep on waiting, it's just kicking the can down the road like we keep on talking about. So.
Right. Exactly.
Completely agree.
I have a question.
Yeah, Alex.
Has it ever been discussed that you know about so in a zone 2, if you have, I might not say it exactly correctly right now, but if your lot allows for a certain amount of certain amount of bedrooms, you can sell. It's like a weird gray area where you can sell like a bedroom allotment for your septic system to someone else in a zone 2 in town. Has that ever been discussed?
No. Not to my knowledge, no.
Because where I used to live on Ninigret, I had a lower lot on I think it was like off of like Payomet Road, but that lower lot, I could have sold the septic rights to it to somebody in New Seabury so that they could build a bigger house on a small lot.
Oh, you mean like a nitrogen credit? Yeah, I have heard something like that. I'm not entirely familiar with it, but I do believe there is something like that people could take advantage of.
It's like a weird loophole that I feel like we could just close up really quickly.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll write something and submit it just as like public comment.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, 'cause I think.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Alex.
that is something that we should weigh in on as well. That nitrogen credit, and I think it just requires some clarification what that's all about, how that works.
Right.
So, yeah, good idea. Okay. Any other comments on bylaw review subcommittee, Regulation 30? And like I said, I will get the schedule out tomorrow to schedule a meeting of the bylaw review subcommittee for our next round of updates and amendments. Johns Pond Milfoil, I contacted the consulting firm of Water and Wetlands who did the initial treatment of Johns Pond Milfoil. They're going to schedule another survey right around mid-May, which is, they said, is the opportune time to see if any milfoil has grown back. They seem to be pretty confident that they hit it all the first time around, but we want to make sure. And also, as the commission may recall, I put in funding request for the Springtown meeting to request additional funds to survey Santuit Pond and subsequent treatments of Santuit, or if Johns Pond requires additional treatment for milfoil, that is on the town meeting warrant, and it has been endorsed by both the Board of Selectmen and Finance Committee unanimously. So that's good to see. And it was, I guess, $35,000 is what I requested. I wanted to overshoot it rather than undershoot it. So I don't think it's going to come to that amount of money, but we want to have sufficient funds in place for an unknown situation at this time. So, Caitlin, you want to update on Choptake?
Sure. Well, we just received the contract for Phase 2 from Town Council, and we are waiting for final approval and execution of said contract. We are also awaiting the conservation restriction to be reviewed through the EEA, and currently they do not have a permanent CR reviewer on staff, so that's been a bit of a complication, but hopefully that'll occur sooner rather than later, but everything is moving forward.
Thank you. And last item is the just a review of the local comprehensive plan workshop, which took place on April 9th. I thought it was a good event, scoping, getting public opinion. It did get off to a little bit of a rough start for those who were there or those who heard about it. But I think it all came together pretty well, and I think what they essentially got out of the scoping is that a lot of the elements of the original local comprehensive plan were still concerns. I only wish that more people from the public attended the event so we could have a wider range of feedback. But for all intents and purposes, it seemed like a lot of the same concerns exist from the original local comprehensive plan, and some new concerns, because the last time the plan was updated or created was in 1998. So we've had a lot of population change, dynamics change since then, and there's been a lot of new feedback, so I was happy to see that. And one other thing that's not on the agenda is just on an update is there is a presentation at the Mashpee Library tomorrow being put on by the Municipal Vulnerability Program. Myself and Ashley and Caitlin will all be there, and we're just going to provide some updates and presentation just on local regulations and what the town is doing, working with the MVP program in terms of improving water quality, stormwater runoff, what you can do to improve conditions on your own property. So just kind of like an educational presentation. It starts at 9:30, and I think it's going to run until about noon time. So and that'll be at the Mashpee Public Library.
Great. I was really happy to see how many people from town actually came and participated. We had Paul, Drew, yourself, that was great. I was happy to see you there. We had people from Planning Board, I think Mary Wagon and Mr. Falone, and I was really happy to see a Select Board member, Mr. Whedon, there. So,
Yeah.
Team effort.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. No other topics to cover.
I just wanted to mention, too, I apologize for not putting it on the agenda prior, but we did start the herring count program on April 1st, which will run to June 15th this year at the Mashpee, Quashnet, and Santuit herring runs. Things are looking good so far, so.
Yeah, it was a little scary there for a while. The Mashpee run is usually the one that starts the earliest, and we didn't really see any significant. We saw one count of 50 between April 1st and the 13th or something. I had gone out there several times and didn't see any herring in my visits, and starting to get a little alarmed. And then all of a sudden, we got a count of, what was it, 100 and...
Yeah, 200 something.
200 and something in a 10-minute span. So they just came in waves, and it was a little bit of cause for panic. I was even checking lower reaches of the river in my conspiracy theory mind that there was poaching going on or something like that, just to be, because it's very unusual to not see or get reports of herring in the Mashpee run, this late in the season, April 15th. So we usually start seeing them at the beginning of April or end of March. But all's well so far. So.
They're probably waiting out COVID.
Blaming on COVID like everything else.
Yeah, there's been a lot of interest, too, in the program this year. We've had quite a lot of volunteers, especially at the Mashpee Run, which is the most important run to count at. So it's been really successful so far.
Okay. Thank you. If there's no other questions or comments, entertain a motion to adjourn.
Before we do that, I just had a question. With April 22nd coming up and it being Earth Day, I know the department, we probably don't have anything planned, but do we know of any of our associations or, groups that we work with that have planned anything or?
We're actually planning to do work on the pollinator gardens on Earth Day with the AmeriCorps and the Friends of Mashpee National Wildlife Refuge.
Okay.
And we also were, someone had reached out regarding some saplings that may come available potentially prior to Arbor Day, that we may be able to put a plant in some of our conservation areas, but we have to wait to hear back from that, so.
Okay. If there's anything like that, if you could just send it out to the commission. I think some of us would like to attend and support, the department and some of these groups. And I think that we should just get in that habit too of maybe we have an annual event calendar so we can, know what events are coming up and help assist in any way. I know I'm always willing to help, so I'm sure a lot of other people are too, so.
Absolutely, good idea.
Yeah,
Thank
good
you.
idea. No problem.
Thank you, Brad.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions from those physically present or those on Zoom? All right, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Charlie. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Paul. Voting, Brian.
Yes.
Paul.
Yes.
Charlie.
Yes.
Alex.
Yes.
I vote aye as well. Motion carries. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great Easter.